Basil intervened today to eliminate the teacher-principal salary anomaly. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and representatives of the government teachers and principals. Trade unions paid their respects to the government at a meeting held today, 10, at Committee Room 01 in Parliament to announce the elimination of the nearly 25-year salary anomaly. An additional 30,000 million rupees will be spent from the forthcoming budget to eliminate the teacher-principal salary disparity for the future of the children and the country. Mr. Rajapaksa informed the teacher-principal trade union representatives. Accordingly, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa thanked Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa for fulfilling the trade union demand. The Minister of Education Dinesh Gunawardena explained the purpose of this discussion. Mrs. Wasantha Handapangada, chairperson of the Sri Lanka Public Education Services Association, handed over the resolution passed by the Sri Lanka Public Education Services Association to the Minister of Finance, Basil Rajapaksa, to resolve the teacher-principal salary disparity. Recognizing the need for a time frame to eliminate the total wage disparity in the crisis created by 1997. The teachers, principals, union representatives said they were pleased that one-third of the budget would be given at once as a starting point. Addressing the gathering, Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa said, "We first discussed this at the cabinet meeting on July 26. A committee comprising Professor G.L. Piras, Gamini Lokuj, Dr. Banjala Gunawardena, Wimal Wirawansa, Udaya Gamampala, Ramesh Patharana and Lazantha Alajayawana was appointed. It was later limited to 4 people. It made a recommendation. My observation as the Minister of Finance was that basically all these demands were not a salary increase. This is a pay gap of 25 years for teachers and principals. The request was made to rectify this. Our recommendation was that it should be considered in the forthcoming budget so as not to create salary inequality in the entire public service. Now comes the budget. The Cabinet has agreed to the relevant recommendations. In this regard, all political parties, including the chief incumbent of Malwathu Asturia, have called on me to resolve the issue of teachers and principals in this budget. The Honorable Prime Minister and especially the President and the Minister of Education have recommended that this should definitely be resolved. We have received a lot of support from the trade unions at this time. The only thing we wanted was to give children an education. At present all schools are open and school activities are carried out in accordance with health recommendations. So we hope to allocate this recommended amount, albeit with great difficulty. This is an elimination of inequality, not a pay rise. I urge the trade unions, including the Maha Sangha here, to see a just solution to the wage disparity that has been unresolved for 20 years. In addition to the amount currently allocated with the approval of the Cabinet, 30,000 million rupees will be allocated from our forthcoming budget to eliminate teacher and principal salary disparities. That is the only secret I told you before the budget and the Cabinet. The other ministers are not to blame. Although several opposition MPs were not present, they demanded that this be resolved. He also remembers. We decided to solve this for the future of the children and the future of the country. During the tenure of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, some agitated to allocate 6% for education. Eventually, all of their salaries were increased. But then 6% forgot. However, we will allocate 7.51% of our total expenditure on education in this budget. It is reserved for the future of this country. The President, the Prime Minister, and especially the Minister of Education have asked us to do this. For the first time in its history, more than 6% of the total budget is spent on education. Although those who agitated at that time forgot, our government, including President Mahinda Rajapaksa, did not forget it. We acknowledge that education is the biggest investment in this country. When it comes to health and education, we are on par with some developed countries in the world. We are at the top in South Asia. We urge all these trade union representatives to increase investment as well as productivity. I request the support of all of you to the Ministry of Education and the government to develop education. As the Minister of Finance, we can talk about demands that go beyond that, said Minister Basil Rajapaksa. Ministers Basil Rajapaksa, Dinesh Gunawardena, Ministers, Professor Kapila Pereira, Secretary to the Ministry of Education, Chamanda Kalarati, Attorney at Law. Waisantha Lanka Pangoda, Secretary, Sri Lanka Public Education Services Association. Mahinda Basil, General Secretary of the Teachers Service Union. Sujeshwara Wamalarat, President of the Sri Lanka Professional Principals Association. Mohan Weerasinghe of the National Principals Association of Sri Lanka and representatives of the teachers and principals trade unions were also present. Note: Prime Minister's Office.